Hope y'all are doing great. Welcome to CMSC 355. We're going to go ahead and get started for today. What I want you to do right now is fill out the form that I have posted right there in the chat. And if you've ever had an internship, please fill out that form. I'll give you just a couple minutes to fill out that form, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, excuse me. It's definitely not Metallica. All right. So some people are reporting that they're not seeing the stream. I just put the link in in Slack, like I always do. So if you ever have that problem, go to Slack. So that was Guns N' Roses. Check, check. Is it echoing? Check, check. Can y'all hear me all right, or is it really bad still? Is it echoing for anybody else? Okay. All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and get started for today. Hopefully you've had time to fill out that link. If not, please do that. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working on xfig. So let me go ahead and pull up. Excuse me. The main monitor. And All right, so we're going to start off. I have my code here. I have my console. I would encourage you both. I would encourage you to have both your console and your editor of choice up and running on your computer. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Excuse me for just a sec. I gotta drink some water. All right. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working with xfig. I'm going to show you a feature in xfig, and then we're going to be editor for C. Yep. So if you have VS Code, you're going to be just opening VS Code. You can also open the code in any editor if you want. Yeah, I just opened up my folder as my workspace in VS Code, and it seems to resolve everything correctly. All right, so I have both of these open, but before we start coding, let's look at xfig. I want to show you how xfig works and what we're going to change about it. All right, so some people are asking how to open the code. And here's what I did, is I just did something like add folder to workspace, and then I went to the folder source, and then I just hit add, and then, you know, I would just, that one, click on a file to open it. So if you're opening your code, you want to just file, you know, what's it, add folder to workspace, open in the folder of interest, source, hit add, and then, you know, click on a file to open it. Make sense? All right, so hopefully we've opened our code successfully. Now we're going to look at xfig. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing, but before I do that, I'm going to change my fill color to something pretty. And I'm going to change my fill style to that. So when I draw boxes, you can see that they show up in pink. All right, I'm seeing a lot of questions about how to open the code. Hopefully, has everybody been able to open the code correctly yet? Just let me know in the chat. If you haven't, remember, you can just go to open your VS Code, file, add folder to workspace, put that folder in there. So add folder to workspace, source, add it, and then you will have everything in your Explorer, which is right there. Some people are asking which folder. I'll show you where mine is. My folder is in C, Sigwin64, user, source, xfig-3. I'll just put this in the chat in case. So that's where mine is. I don't know where yours is because you might be on a Mac or something different, but that's where mine is. And you're going to want to put in the source folder under that. Yep. So remember, go add folder to workspace. I should actually put this one. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working on a feature called depth. Depth is specified right here at the bottom. If you look at the bottom of xfig, you see there is a depth of 50 right now, right here. May be hard for you to see, but that says depth 50. Right there at the bottom where my mouse is mousing around on. Okay, depth of 50. What that controls is where these boxes go in terms of overlap. Right now, all boxes are drawn on 50, depth of 50, which means that if I draw a box on top of an existing box, it just hides that box. Now, if I were to change the depth, you guys see a depth at the bottom. If you don't, you might want to like view and then show depth manager. Okay, view, show depth manager if you don't have depth. View. So I can make it go away, I think. Here's the depth manager over here. Some people are missing things at the bottom. So I think you're gonna wanna, I don't know why you don't have them at the bottom. But you should be able to at least get them on the right. And you have to click rectangle first. Thank you. Yeah. Click on the rectangle. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jake. Excellent. All right. So I think we're all there now. We can all draw rectangles. This would be easier to do in person. So try and draw a rectangle like I'm doing. Everybody try and draw a rectangle. So everybody draw a rectangle using xfig. See how that works. Make sure that you have it set to fill color and fill style so that you can see fill color and fill style, which are at the bottom. And what should happen right now is that every time you draw a new box, it should appear in front of existing boxes. Somebody's asking, does it need to be pink? Of course it needs to be pink. What a silly question. Just joking. I guess you could make it other colors, but I would really prefer strongly if you made it pink. All right, so we're all drawing boxes. We're all drawing boxes, and we're noticing that these boxes can go on top of existing boxes. All right. Now, here's the trick. When depth is always 50, as the implementation is right now. Depth is always 50. If I were to change the depth to 49 and hit set, then that would draw in front of everything. If I were to change my depth to 51, which is a deeper depth, if you will, then I can draw a rectangle, but it's hidden behind the rectangles that already exist. Okay? So a higher depth means that things will go behind a lower depth. Does that make sense to everybody? Do we understand how depth works? Remember, you can change the fill color at the bottom. You have to change fill color and fill style to get this to work. Fill color and fill style. All right, so I'm gonna start a new one. All right, so that's how it's working right now. What we are gonna do, does anybody have any questions about how depth is working right now? Anybody have any questions about how depth is working right now? You're on the same depth level. Somebody's asking, how do you add different depth levels? Well, you can change depth at the bottom. You can set it to 50, 51, 49, whatever you have it set to at the bottom. When you make your next rectangle, then that rectangle will have the depth at whatever you set it at. So right now, these are all the same depth. That's why they're overlapping each other, because just the newer ones overlap the older ones. That's just the way it works. Yes, it's like layers in Photoshop, absolutely. Well, I don't know Photoshop that well, but it is the same kind of concept. Remember, if you want to change the depth, you click on depth at the bottom and you can change it. Now, what we are going to do is every time you, hold on. Okay. Every time that you add a new rectangle, we actually want to increase the depth. So right now, every time we add a new rectangle, it goes in front of the existing rectangle. We are going to change the code so that every time we add a new rectangle, it actually increases the depth, and that means it should go behind existing rectangles. Brandon is asking really deep questions. We are not going to go that deep, Brandon, but that is a very good question. What we are going to do is we are going to change the behavior. Depth is now static. We want to change the behavior so every time you draw a new rectangle, the depth is increased by 1, and that will have the effect of meaning that when we draw rectangles, they will always be behind existing rectangles. And so we should be able to see a different observable behavior on our xfig. All right? So that is what we're going to try and do. So I want everybody to go ahead and open your code and start hacking away and trying to figure out what to do. I will give you a hint. I would start searching for things like depth to see if I can figure out where the depth is set for new rectangles. All right, so I'm going to put on a little music. We are going to start trying to make depth increase for every new rectangle that's created so that rectangles go behind existing rectangles. All right, you can put any questions you have in the chat, and we're going to go ahead and start coding. All right, so go ahead and get started coding, and I'll put on some tunes. Go ahead and get started.
Slammed the door behind him, called his daddy dumb. He left home with tomorrow writing on his thumb. No particular direction, 17 and scared. It's to ride outside a load. Driver said, son, where you going? He said, anywhere but here. If you don't know where you're going, any old road will take you there. When it's ramming seeds are sowing, you can't find the will to care. Any way you travel, red dirt, clay, or gravel, lost without a prayer, destination anywhere, any old road will take you there. A little all-night cafe, young woman there in tears. Waitress says you want some coffee. Does anybody know you're here? She slowly tells her story. Says he don't love me anymore. I left my ring there by the bed, and I don't know what lies ahead. I've never been this gone before. If you don't know where you're going, any old road will take you there. When it's ramming seeds you're sowing, you can't find the will to care. Any way you travel, red dirt, clay, or gravel, lost without a prayer, destination anywhere, any old road will take you there. Sometimes the road is narrow, sometimes the path is straight. At times we face so many curves, right turns are hard to make. If you don't know where you're going, any old road will take you there. When it's rambling seeds you're sowing, you can't find the will to care. Any way you travel, red dirt, clay, or gravel, lost without a prayer, destination anywhere, any old road will take you there. Out there running scared, in the middle of nowhere, any old road will take you there.
All right, so seems like some of y'all may not have xfig all set up exactly like you want it. I'm having trouble understanding what your questions are. So for instance, let me just show you my folder structure. I'm on Windows, but you know, should be similar to what y'all have. For instance, here is my folder structure. Let me see if I can zoom in here. And you guys and gals see this. C, Sigwin, I think it was user, source, xfig, xfig-32a, and source. That's where all my files are. Do y'all not have a similar folder like this if you're on Windows? Okay, so as long as you have these folders, then you should have these files in those folders. Sub options. Some people seem to not have sub options. I don't know what. Doesn't matter if you have B or A, to be honest, that doesn't matter. Yeah, you should extract the files, yes. Yeah, so it's fine, again, if you have xfig-32.8b or A, it doesn't matter. Somebody's asking, how do we open the code again? Remember, File, add folder to the workspace, and just go to that folder. Somebody's asking, are we just changing the default depth value? Yes. Somebody's asking, how do I update xfig after editing code? Remember, that's what we do over here in the console. I type make-j install. After I edit the code and hit save, I hit make-j install. And that's what updates xfig. All right, seems like some of y'all are making progress. Has anybody figured out So if I hit File, Add Folder to Workspace, maybe you need to create a new workspace if you don't have those options. All right, so if you don't know how to open the code, I believe VS Code works for Mac. Let me double check. VS Code on Mac. Let me double check. Yep, it definitely does. Check it. If you go to xfig -32b and you only see like 6 files, you probably have not extracted your code. And so you probably weren't able to get your code compiling. That's interesting. You can Slack me, but remember there's only one of me and there's 100 of y'all, so I can't troubleshoot everything that you're running into right now. I can try, but you know. All right, for those of you that are kind of having VS Code or even just Notepad++, you don't have to have VS Code working. And you're able to edit code and compile code and make it change. Does anybody know what file we should change? Yes, Ty, you are right. The end goal is to modify code so that every box gets placed behind every current box. Somebody's asking, what do we do after changing the depth and getting it to work in xfig? You kind of like, great, we're getting some answers. People are saying box.c is what we change. That is exactly right. Can anybody tell me what line on box.c? No, we are changing box.c. Can anybody tell me what line? Excellent. 115. Here is the only change I made to implement the first part of this fix. I changed current depth from current depth to plus plus. Okay? This is all I did. And we did it in line 115 of box. And then after I did it, remember I made a change, I saved that file, and then I go ahead and go over to my console over here and I hit make-j install, which I just did, and you'll see my code is building, and now it should be installed. It's done. So now, when I go ahead and run xfig again, that comes up, and I'll show you that now my change is in fact working. I have to get a box, make sure I choose a fill color, always choose pink, and a fill style, just normal. And you'll see I create a box, and when I create another box, it will be behind that box. Now, that somebody's asking, what is the terminal change command? The terminal change command is make-j install. Make space -j space install. So it is make-j install. If you're getting something weird like no rule to make target, I wonder if you're in the right folder. Remember, you need to be in xfig -3.2.8 A or B, not in any other folder. You do need to have, you do need to have privileges to run that, probably. All right, so we have made that change, but there is something that is not correct about this change so far? Can anybody look at your own system if you have made this change correctly and there is a bug in this change if you only change that one line of code? Does anybody see the bug in that change? Does anybody see the bug in the change? Aha! Adam, great answer. Adam Harm's answer is the depth is not updating, and by that, the box at the bottom of depth 50 is not updating. When you click on it and it's correct, it says 55. However, when I just look down here, it is not correct, okay? So this depth down here is not correct. It's just not updating. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to update our code so that when we do this change, the button also updates, okay? Somebody's asking, what is the file we need to change? d_box.c, line 115. That is the first place you need to change. Now there is another change you need to do in order to make this button update. I'm going to leave y'all to it. Try and update this button right here, okay? So that I'm going to turn on some music. That's what we're trying to do next. And I'm going to be working on it too. If you feel a little lost, you can watch me. Otherwise, go for it.
Here's to the trains I missed, the loves I lost, the bridges I burned, the rivers I never crossed. Here's to the call I didn't hear, the signs I didn't heed, the roads I couldn't take, the map that I just wouldn't read. It's a big old world, but I found my way from the hell and the hurt that led me straight to this. Here's to the trains I missed. I've been a clown, I've been a fool, and I pushed on every chance. I searched far and wide to try to crawl out of God's hand. But there's stones I didn't throw, and hearts I didn't break, and the little hope I held on to with a silver shining thread of faith. It's a big old world, but I found my way from the hell and the hurt that led me straight to this. Here's to the trains I missed. Here's to the place I found, the love I know, the earth and the sky that I call home. And here's to the things I believe, bigger than me, and the moment I find myself right where I'm supposed to be. It's a big old world, but I found my way from the hell and the hurt that led me straight to this. Yeah, take me to this. Here's to the trains I miss. In every life, there's heartache and pain. Some live with sorrow, some live with shame, regret and worry.
All right, now I'm going to give you a hint. This is a challenge. This is a challenging task, let's say. So I'm going to give you all a hint. First of all, somebody is asking me what software are you using to easily search through different files. Is you just use edit and find in files. Control-Shift-F is how you could also trigger it. Sorry. Find in files or find. Control-F, Control-Shift-F, right here, and then search. I want to mention that show depth is how the method that is updating that button, okay? So show depth in w_endPanel.c, that is what is updating that button. So I want you to know that just so you can give you a little hint. So what might you do now if you know that's how that button is updated? You might maybe take a look at how other people are calling that method, okay? And then see how they call it, and then you try and call it in that place that we discussed earlier. All right, that's enough hints. Check it out. Get back to work.
Forever can last, so lay down your burdens, put them in the past, and rise and shine. Rise and shine. There's a new day dawning. The voice that you hear is your soul calling. Don't wait till tomorrow. Lord knows it's time to rise and shine. Rise and shine. Rise and shine. When night falls around you and the dark closes in, you can't find the answer and you can't see the end. Just look to the east, the light's breaking through. Morning has broken, all things are made new, and rise and shine. Rise and shine. There's a new time to rise and shine. Rise and shine. Rise and shine. To rise and shine. Rise and shine. To rise and shine.
All right, I want to just take a second to pause and show y'all that my solution is working. All right, I'm gonna start with a new file here. If you want to watch me, I have a solution that's working. You can see I've added a box. I will add a second box that is behind it. And you can see that, well, it's really small, but you may be able to see that this number goes up. It's at 58. I'm going to add a third box, and that makes it go to 59. I'll add a fourth box. That makes it go to 60. So this is now being updated as I create boxes. Now, that works great when I create a box. What happens when I create this rounded object? You'll see that the depth does not change, and so it comes in front of it. Now, what I want you to do for your thing that you're going to turn in is you're going to also fix this feature for the rounded box in addition to the regular box, okay? So the solution that you're going to be turning in for today's Coding Friday will involve both the rounded and the rectangle box. And I open up for questions for the rest of class on what I can do to help you be successful in this task. I know a lot of people are having some issues. Maybe you didn't get things compiling as well as you thought, or didn't extract things. All right, so somebody's asking, how did you go about fixing the square? So let's look through that solution. First, here we go with the square. I found the current depth, right? Where the current depth is set in this box, which is the square, okay? And what I did is I saw where the box depth was being set, and it was set to current depth. And I added this plus plus here. Okay, so every time the box is created, I added 1 to current depth, which is a global variable. And so in that way, it was always incrementing. However, now that didn't really solve the entire problem because we had the button that still wasn't being updated. And so then I figured out that show depth was the way to update that. Show depth is what updates that button, the text on that button. So I called that, and what I did to call that is I just found where somebody else was calling that by doing one of these searches, and then I just copied what they had done. However, when I did that and I tried to compile, I noticed that this depth button variable wasn't defined. And so what I had to do is I had to go up here to the includes, and I had to include the endPanel.h, because in endPanel.h, I can show you if I can clear this. I want to go back to regular. All right, let's go down, look at the endPanel.h. You can see that show depth is defined there, but also the depth button, is also defined there. So I had to import that so that everything would compile. Somebody's saying that the rounded box in xfig is called an arc box. That's a great hint for those of you that are still implementing this. All right, I'm going through the questions. Somebody's asking, do we need to show what parts of the code we changed? No, you just need to show the correct feature working. And somebody else is asking, can you explain more what software is? Is that, I don't understand that question. Maybe just make it clearer if you want to. Any other questions about getting your code setup correct? SW was the input to show depth. That's a great question. Thank you. That is actually a really good question. All right, so the question is this. I'm going to go back to this. End panel show depth. Okay, this is a method that was defined in endPanel.h and implemented in endPanel.c, and it takes a parameter, which is a pointer, and I believe this is just the button. If I had to guess, I believe this is just the button that is drawn. I don't actually know because I don't know this code base like back and front and back, but I believe this is the button, right? So it's showing the depth and it's updating the button. And I believe this pointer is to the button. So yeah, SW is probably a type def. And I believe it refers to the button. Good question. Any other questions? All right, so today somebody else actually was asking, Brandon was asking, our Fridays when we be normally working with xfig. We will, on alternating Fridays, we may work with xfig or we may work with Replit. I'm not gonna necessarily tell you ahead of time which one we're working with, but we're gonna be working with one or the other. So yeah, some Fridays we will work on xfig for sure. And Quang Lee is asking for clarification. You said you wanted the arc box to behave the same way the normal box, correct? Yes. So what I want you to do is make sure that the depth is increasing in the same way for the circle, what is it called, the arc box, as it is for the regular box. Somebody's asking, we'll be working with xfig Monday or Wednesday. No, we only have, on Friday is the day we focus on coding and coding in class. So we don't usually do, coding on Monday or Wednesday. We need those for lecture, so you can also learn some lecture material. So we don't do that in class. You may be working with it for like project deliverables outside of class, but not in lecture. Somebody's asking, why does the order of the imports at the top matter? Yeah, I mean, it's just the matter. It's just the order of that things are imported in. So things get imported in that order that things are specified at the top. So it's just like the compiler process is the first one first, the second one second. Somebody's asking, what is exactly the deliverable for the code for this Code Friday? The deliverable is a demonstration on your computer, a short video of it working the way we talked about. So the boxes going behind the other boxes. Boxes going behind the other boxes, both the rounded and the rectangle boxes, as well as the depth increasing. Does that make sense? So just a very short video MP4 format of it working for both types of boxes. This is due by today at 3 a.m. Well, really tomorrow at 3 a.m. As always, and you can turn it in late if you need to, as late as Saturday or really Sunday at 3 a.m. Savannah is asking, do we have to prove it's us like our first video? Yep, in Gradescope that it's specified just like in your first video. So just make sure you do that. Somebody's asking, my boxes are going behind the other boxes, but I'm not sure how to increase the depth number. So what you're gonna wanna do is, remember, you're gonna update that, you're gonna call that show depth method, which updates the button, okay? So Hannah Day, make sure you call that show depth method. Look into other places where the show underscore depth method is called and use those as an example. All right, if you survived today was one of our first, real task with xfig. Xfig is not trivial to get to compile and to work with. It's a little bit older technology, but this is done intentionally, just to stretch y'all and get y'all used to different ways of working with software. Working with C, working with makefiles, working with VS Code. In other cases, we're going to be working with Android Studio, and that's kind of a little bit more smooth to work with. But I want y'all to be able to work with a variety of softwares so that when you have to work in a new environment, you're not totally intimidated by it. It's not something that is actually that hard. It is something that there's a lot of what I call accidental complexity. So complexity that's not really, it's not the core computing concepts that are hard. It's really just, hey, I don't have the right permissions, or my computer didn't download something correctly, or I forgot to extract something. So don't get too frustrated with this. Just, go back through and go through all the steps and make sure you've done everything. Once you get it working, it's really gratifying to see real software actually changing. And that's what we're trying to get to in this class. So don't get too frustrated. This was a stretch class, but I have seen a lot of y'all be able to do these kinds of things. Talk to your friends if you need help. But keep on keeping on. We're going to get you over the hump on this. I hope y'all had fun, and I will see y'all all on Monday. Have a great weekend. Talk to y'all later.
There's holes in my heart, scars on my soul, nights I fell apart, and days I lost control on the inside, waiting for the storm to subside, somehow scraping by, climbing every hill, too stubborn not